welcome back to the Clio. And I finally had a chance to try the H&R and Koni suspension on track. A couple of weeks ago now, I went to Blyton Park, the usual haunt. Did a Christmas track day there, so it's just after Christmas, nice to get out of the house. And took the Clio. Having fashioned an adjustment tool for the front shock absorbers, I was able to adjust those for the first time. So I have used the car with this suspension on at Cadwell before, but I wasn't able to set the shocks up. And I think they were on a bit of a weird setup because the garage that fitted them had put the rears on full soft and the front on, I think they were about halfway. So it was a bit of a dodgy setup at Cadwell. So Blyton Park was the first outing with the adjustable shocks, and it went really well. It was a cold day. It was hovering around zero most of the day, somewhat below zero at the start of the day. Although it was mostly dry, there's some parts that just never thawed out or never really got dry, but it was mostly dry. And the car's really competent on the Konis and H&Rs. It was pretty good on track with just the Cup suspension, but I think the new suspension's taken it up a notch. Like now I've got it on full soft and it's a fair bit softer than the factory Cup suspension. It certainly absorbs the bumps a bit better. Low speed damping is still feels a bit harsh at really low speeds, but not as harsh as it did with the Cup suspension. But it's pretty supple. On track I cranked it up a bit. To be honest, I spent most of the day at full hard. I think that's because the spring rates just aren't quite high enough really for track work, and so I think I was asking the damper to do what the spring should have been doing. So it's perhaps not an ideal setup, but on any setup for road and track you're going to have a compromise, and for me it's better to compromise on the track than it is on the road. So they're pretty competent. Track tyre on the front wheels and the AD08Rs on the rears, and in terms of pace it was pretty, I wouldn't call it astounding, but it was impressive. I think there were quite a few 116s. There may well have been a 150. I probably edged into the 115s, but I don't have the time nor the inclination to go through all my videos with a stopwatch. Perhaps I would in the MX-2000, but certainly not in the Clio. So it was pretty good pace, to be honest, given the conditions. And I know it depends entirely on you know, the drivers that are driving them, the way the cars are set up, and whether people actually want to push on. But I think the only thing that came past me all day was a Clio Cup track car, and I still tried to catch them up, but it's amazing that a fairly standard Clio with some decent suspension, some road track crossover tyres, and some brake pads capable of coping, can pretty much outdo a lot of track cars. Yeah, certainly put on a good show for such a humble car. And I love the fact that it's got all the interior and stuff and standard wheels. To all intents and purposes, it kind of looks like a standard car with some track tyres on. It's clearly a little bit lower, so I think it represents what the car is. It's had the suspension fettled, but otherwise it's pretty much standard. So that's really nice to hare around track and to come past some pretty good stuff, but in a very road biased car. I did get a bit carried away with the sessions at time. I think one session in particular, I think I did a 35-minute spell, which perhaps wasn't the best idea in what is fundamentally a road car. And the brakes, of all things, not at the end of that session, but towards the end of the day, the brakes, I wouldn't say they gave up, but I got a tiny bit of fade, which was really unexpected because I'm using the Carbon Lorraine RC6 pads, and I've just changed to the Motul RBF 660 or something like that, the one that says 660 in the name, brake fluid. So I doubt very much it was the fluid, but it was probably the pads. I understand from reading some comments from Nigel Pinder actually that the Carbon Lorraines operate at a very high temperature, so you really need to try and cool them, which is not something I've done on this car, so I'd imagine I'm to blame for that. I just assumed that fitting a very track biased pad on a fairly modest track car, I wouldn't really need to worry about it, but it seems that I've probably taken the best out of them, unfortunately, and they're quite expensive pads, so hopefully I've used them on the road a little bit before swapping back to the road pads, so maybe I'll sand them back a little bit and then try and rebed them or something. I don't honestly know what I'd be doing with that, so I'd have to research what I can do to try and restore them, or maybe I've just knackered them, which would be a real shame. But yeah, I was surprised by that. They gave up a little bit. So yeah, anybody else running those pads for extended stints on track and driving hard, I'd recommend some cooling. successful day at Blyton. Really pleased with the car. It fits the bill so well. I've now living in the countryside, so every single day I take the Clio, drive to the gym and back down some nice B roads. It's absolutely fabulous on the B roads, just great. I don't want to be driving a million miles an hour. I want to enjoy driving at sensible speeds, and the Clio is just a joy on those roads every day. And it's great to be able to take it to the track, drive it there with ease, pop the open face helmet on, normal seat belts, and enjoy a day at the track without all the sweat and preparation and effort that goes with some of the other toys. So yeah, thoroughly enjoyable. In terms of what's next, if it wasn't for the other cars, I should love to put a short ratio box and an LSD in this car. I think that would be a great upgrade, but I think something that would end up costing certainly over £1,000. And so given the other toys I've got that are certainly more track focused, I think it'd be wise just to chill out a bit with this one now. It's very capable, it's very enjoyable. Probably want some new pads for track day, maybe a little bit of cooling that can be blanked off for road use and used on track, but it's in a good place now. I've got some goings on with the seats, which I'll cover in a different video, so you'll have to tune in to see what happens there. But apart from that, I think it's use and enjoy.